Hey guys, happy Sunday. Welcome back. Thanks for stopping by for another episode here at All I See Is W, where we talk about stocks, Bitcoin, and finance. In today's video, I'd like to talk about the overall market updates. We'll be covering the latest news around the macro scale updates, what's driving Bitcoin price to go down. Obviously, we're seeing Bitcoin price dropping below the $100,000. This was all attributed to the recent news with the United States bombing the Iran nuclear facilities. And now, as a result of that, we're hearing that the Iranians, they're closing the location where they're transferring oil, so closing down that sea right across from where, Saudi Arabia, United Emirates is at. So what does this mean with the future? Is now a time to buy Bitcoin, hold or sell? And what does this mean for companies like Strategy, MSTR? We'll be covering technical analysis of Bitcoin, what my price prediction, as well as covering the latest updates with price predictions of strategy as well. Now, if you're new to this channel, first off, I would really appreciate you hitting the like, subscribing for more related content. Let's begin, guys. Let's first talk about the Bitcoin 200-week moving average heat map. So what we're looking at is just the overall Bitcoin cycle since the creation of Bitcoin. We're looking at 2012 to 2025. One of the key things I want to highlight is with the purple line that we see, that's the 200-week moving average. And we see, Bitcoin price, following that trajectory of that line. And anytime when we see the dots represented in purple and blue, that's an indicator for Bitcoin to be purchased. That's the accumulation phase. And what we see, with these red dots, orange dots, that's an indicator of an overbought situation where we have relative strength shooting up. So anytime when we see, yellow, red dots, that's an indicator for Bitcoin to top out in the Bitcoin bull cycle. What we know is the halving event took place in April 2024. We're about over a year out since that halving, but we haven't even had the orange red dots kick in yet. So this is an indicator that Bitcoin is still in that accumulation phase. We haven't even seen the price, hover up above like that 70, 80 RSI where we would see these red dots kicking the gears. So that's the upside with Bitcoin. Even though we're hearing so much about the macro updates, Bitcoin is designed to go up after every halving event, and we have the data points to prove that with every prior halving event that's taken place. That's by design. On top of that, we know that countries are just, attracted to Bitcoin. When you look at this visual, while everyone is worried with fear, uncertainty, like what Warren Buffett says, be greedy when others are fearful. Right now, everyone's fearful with their money. While you are skilled, whales are buying Bitcoin like never seen before. So in purple would be the new whales, and then in white would be just the price of Bitcoin. So what has happened since those who have millions and billions of dollars, have been buying since 2024, 2025. Things have just been ramping up. The whales do believe in Bitcoin and they've been just stacking right now, along with public companies. Here's an interesting comment from Bitcoin News. $11.5 trillion BlackRock said if every millionaire in the United States asked their financial advisor to get them one Bitcoin, there wouldn't be enough. Obviously, 95% of the population haven't even touched Bitcoin yet, while there's only 5% Bitcoin available to be mined. That just tells you something that we're at that, supply shock with Bitcoin. It's very scarce. And as a result, Bitcoin price is going to drive up, even though all these macro updates are causing short-term FUD right now. Bitcoin price, think about it, it's been hovering above 100,000 for, over 40 days. And just with it, getting below the 100,000, slight pullback, I wouldn't worry too much. We're looking at the strategic Bitcoin reserve race. So historical day for Texas yesterday. I mean, I was making a video yesterday and it's interesting because like right after that video, an hour later, Texas got that enacted into law. But here's an interesting thing. It went from chamber two to enacted as of yesterday. So the governor of Texas, he officially signed Texas, as the third state enacting strategic Bitcoin reserve. What does that look like? Texas has $500 billion dollars in the reserve, and now they have the allowance to use that $500 billion dollars to buy up Bitcoin. So that just tells you something. I mean, it's not a crypto strategic Bitcoin reserve. This one is clearly a Bitcoin strategic Bitcoin reserve. So huge kudos to the overall state. But just looking at this visual, Texas Governor Greg Abbott just signed Texas Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. The future of finance is digital and the future of capital formation is in Texas. Let's go. I mean, big state Texas that drives huge economy growth with its gross domestic output GDP. This is a big testament for all of the remaining states that's awaiting SBR approval. We're looking at HODL 15 top 100 companies. I mean, companies are just ramping up buying Bitcoin right now. So the least amount of Bitcoin you have ranked 100 Athena Bitcoin, 17 Bitcoins. That's quite a lot as well. I mean, number one strategy, 592,100. So for every 10,000 increase with Bitcoin, it only gets more and more difficult over time as Bitcoin price appreciates. But look at strategy. They've already stacked 592,000. They've done this, through a workshop of like over 5 years. So they've painted that roadmap for success. Other companies are, ramping up. Obviously, we see Meta Planet, in the top 10. They've been buying for over a year, so they have that trajectory of buying historically for the last year. But key thing is, strategy buying for the last 5 years doesn't matter if it's at 10,000, less than 10,000, over 50,000, over 100,000. Strategy will keep stacking sats. Michael Saylor poses, and this is really attributed to Lynn Alden's, presentation during the Bitcoin conference. Nothing stops this train. What does that mean? It really comes down to Bitcoin and inflation deficit. Things will just continue to go up when it comes to the U.S. deficit. Bitcoin price will continue to go up as well. And Saylor, he has a lovely phrase. Nothing stops this orange. So most of you are wondering how much is Saylor going to be buying tomorrow? I mean, he's been just buying huge number of, Satoshis every week now. He doesn't stop. Nothing stops this orange. So put it down in the comments. How much Bitcoin do you think Saylor will be announcing tomorrow? And will it be, to get that even number, similar to how MetaPlanet does it? They like, buying at that lucky price point or even numbers. And BitGrid posts, will we see 600,000 total Bitcoin on Monday? It's very possible. That's, 7,900 Bitcoins. Very achievable. I mean, we had last week Sailor buying, more than that amount. So it's definitely very possible to get to that even number, 600,000, to get into that threshold similar to BlackRock and be only about 80, 90,000 Bitcoins behind BlackRock, which is an $11 trillion company. We have another posting in MSTR Bull. Q2 earnings report is coming. No analysts are forecasting the gap changes Bitcoin from impairment to profit. When retail markets see the numbers we know are coming, faces will melt. Bitcoin at 104,000 gives MSTR profit of 1,100 per share. That's a PE of 22, which is 5,700 share price. Be ready. MSTR is gonna, go to the moon. Here's an interesting visual from Chris Millis, and I would highly recommend following Chris Millis. Definitely, he puts out some great visuals. He's a, MSTR bull, but he created this Bitcoin Treasury company scorecard to evaluate, each Bitcoin Treasury company based on different variables such as leadership, how they're, acquiring Bitcoin, what's their strategy in terms of flywheel, what's the market sentiment like, when it comes to volume, when it comes to investor confidence, as well as runway. So as we look at strategy, obviously we know leadership strong. Saylor has that strong leadership, tells that compelling story. I mean, he is able to, influence other companies to get on board like Metaplanet, Semler Scientific and others. So definitely with the tranches as well, we see MSTR doing things very well there with that big HODL, along with the flywheel with the ATMs, with the convertible notes, creating, strike, strife, and stride. They've created like a 4D flywheel where the mechanics are just churning away the ability to suck in more fiat to buy more Bitcoin. That's definitely doing very well right now. But when we look at companies like Semler Scientific, the flywheel isn't really working yet. I mean, they've announced aggressive plans to buy up Bitcoin for the next 3 years, but we haven't seen that put into action yet. Along with sentiment, we see sentiment with like Metaplanet. Obviously, we see the share price skyrocketing, but with Semler Scientific, volume's been decreasing price action, it's been going down since the last 3 months. But does this mean that, things can reverse? I definitely do see reversals along with MSTR as well. While market sentiment has been flowing into like more of the hot companies like Metaplanet and all that, while these companies have been very favorable, I really do think that the U.S. based companies such as Strategy, Semler Scientific will have market sentiment increases as well as runway improvements overall. But as we look at the total scorecard, we see, MSTR based on this criteria, we have it set at, 1976%. And as soon as we see market sentiment changing, there's no reason to, have uncertainty whether strategy will not get above the 90% scorecard. I think all of this is going to be attributed to the overall like stack that they have, getting close to 600,000. So nice scorecard when you look at it through all these variables, but I do think that market sentiment's definitely going to be changing, and this is going to result in an increase in the share price. Let's take a look at Bitcoin technical analysis. So, key thing is we're now seeing Bitcoin hovering back into that Ichimoku cloud. That creates fear. Yes, that's one thing that we have to consider, is it going to pull back even further now that we've broken through that, 100,000 psychological barriers since May 8th? I mean, it's been over 40 days, and then now out of nowhere, after hearing about the bombing that took place, Bitcoin is hovering, at 99,160. Will it continue to go down further? I think that next line protection is going to be around that 96,000. And we know that, Q2 is going to be ending at in the next 8 days. So it's going to be very important to see how Bitcoin performs. Will Bitcoin reverse as we head into Monday? So here's a key thing to look at. If we get, below that 96,000, we may very well get more of a pullback. But let's just wait and see. I mean, going from like 103 to 99,000, that's not much of a correction. I mean, Bitcoin hovering above 100,000 for, 45 days. Now at that support level of 99,000, we're thinking it's crashing. Bitcoin is maturing. I'm not too worried. It's just going to keep going up. Nothing stops this orange. Bitcoin is the future. Saylor, he announced during the Prague event that Bitcoin is going to 21 million in 21 years. So definitely huge upside. I mean, he brought up his conviction from 13 million to 21 million for the price of Bitcoin. Let's pivot over to strategy, MSTR, technical analysis. So, just zooming in more on the current price action, we bypassed that, that big bullish pennant flag, but we're now also seeing another bullish pennant flag being drawn out. So just focusing on The technicals, where do market participants want to see the price action go? We've seen, the price action just in this bull flag, get to like 440 where it currently is right now, a drop off of like $100, around $369. I do see that, we're just consolidating right now, and most of you are wondering, are we going to see more of a pullback? It is quite possible for us to, get below 350. Yes, hovering in this continued Bitcoin bull flag. MACD is showing, not much of a reversal pattern on the bullish divergence. Relative strength has been just in that plateau of 50, but any drive up in the price of Bitcoin, let's say Bitcoin it gets back up into the 103,000, which I do see that Bitcoin has that vitality for it to do so. MSTR is going to run back up into the 400. I do see huge upside. I'm not too worried. In this case, the whales are going to buy, with, Bitcoin price going down. I believe there's going to be a lot of people who have cash on the sideline. They're going to take a stab at strategy in Bitcoin as well. And that's going to drive up the price of strategy. As we head into Q3, Q4, I do see upside getting into that $1,000 range for strategy. That's my forecast. Mark that, because as we get to the end of the year, we'll be talking about strategy having that next leg up. But with that, let's turn it over to Saylor.
It used to be, if you go back to 2018 in the Bitcoin community, if you said you said Larry Fink, they would say, oh, Larry Fink doesn't like us. And in the year 2024, Larry Fink goes on television and speaks to leaders in the world and says Bitcoin is a store of value. It protects the sovereignty of the individual. It allows you to achieve your hopes. It is hope. Larry Fink has said Bitcoin is hope. Now, what does that say to me? It says we don't have enemies. What we have are people that need Bitcoin that don't yet know why they should be our friend. When someone goes on television and they're asked, what do you think about Bitcoin? And they get poked and they're a little bit irritated, they got to ask the question. They're not an enemy of Bitcoin. They're just not prepared for the question. And in fact, over time, the journalists will do the poking because they know the most important thing in the world today is Bitcoin. And you're going to have a group of people that understand it, that will say it's the future. And you'll have a group of people that don't understand it and they will not have embraced it. But at the end of the day, with time, with education, we're going to see more and more people join the network, and they're going to participate.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed another episode. Let me know what your comments are, what your takeaway is, what your predictions of Bitcoin and strategy is, and how you're seeing what's going on with the market. I'd love to hear what your comments and questions are. And, if you're new to this channel, I would really appreciate hitting the like and subscribing for more related content. Thanks, guys.